So Kairos Ensemble have a new album out called Here Is Love, and it is an album of classic hymns arranged for jazz group. And I was just going to share a few thoughts on how I put those arrangements together. So we'll go through track by track. If you're interested in looking at the sheet music, you can get that on Kairos Ensemble Bandcamp, their page there. You can download the charts. And if you want to hear the album, of course, it's available for download or CDs and so on. So I'm going to go through track by track. Be Thou My Vision is the opener. I think the thing, just to note on this, often this melody is played in 3 beats and a bar in the major key. So the big difference is that we frame the whole thing in the relative minor. Changes the vibe. We're also playing it in 4 with a kind of straight 8s feel, where it's got this little rhythmic vamp going like this. So that's kind of pulsing through. So it's got a different kind of momentum to it. But the nice thing about playing it in this minor key is it almost turns it into like a minor blues, a kind of opening, an open section for improvisation. Now we do go to the relative major right at the end, so for the outro, which also has a nice effect because we're moving from that the minor key, up to the major, and it's almost like a little shards of light for me, that sort of feeling of moving from the minor to the major. So I'll just give a little example of that. So put it all over kind of pedal at the end. And then at the end of this piece, there's a kind of a breathing space, a kind of I think when I'm arranging for jazz group, I'm often looking for little spaces where something can be open, and so it's a very simple thing at the end. We just take this last phrase. So it's kind of like a dominant chord suspended over the tonic. That's how I look at it anyway. So it's like a sort of C7 flat 9, which is a diminished sound, or a C sharp diminished over F, which has this lovely tension and wants to resolve. So that is Be Thou My Vision. Okay, we're on to I Will Sing the Wondrous Story. This one, I wanted to mention this sort of pedal, but also moving via the sharpened fifth. It's that sort of sound, you hear that. So if you're in some static harmony, having some chromatic movement within that can add a bit of momentum. I mean, you hear it on all sorts of music. I'm thinking of It never entered my mind. What's that one? So this, it's on James Bond, you know. Anyway, that chromatic move informs this whole piece. So instead of going, I will sing, it's all over a pedal. So it's over the dominant pedal, C pedal in the key of F, and then it moves from but it just sounds nice to me. More traditional harmony for this bit. So I'm playing the wrong chords. It's just a kind of nice way to add a bit of an interlude, an introduction, an ending. That all takes that kind of theme, but it's this chromatic. And that C sharp or D flat informs the solo section, which then takes that, we go to a B flat minor. So this gets very intense. It's kind of this descending chromatic sequence to this suspended sound at the end. It goes round and round, and it's something Tom on his drums really digs into. So having that sort of, and then this melody comes in with the sax and the tuba. And then it's back to the intro on this on the dominant suspension. Back to the melody. So I think when I'm looking at hymns in general, sometimes I'm looking for ways to weed out some of the chords to make it simpler, especially for a jazz context where you want that kind of space. You don't want to have necessarily four, or in this case three. You don't want to have three chord movements on every bar, because it just gets too dense and quite difficult to play over, or it becomes a headache to play over. So I'm thinking of ways, how can we thin that out? How can we have sort of a little bit more space? Often that's with pedals, you know, having the chord movements but over something more static, and then it's often finding little sequences like this chromatic movement which can repeat, and it provides a good sort of springboard for some improvisation. Okay, so that's I Will Sing the Wondrous Story. The next song we're looking at is Nothing But the Blood of Jesus, and this the first thing to note maybe is that because the tune is inherently a kind of call and response. What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. So we put that between the sax and the tuba, and that sort of sounds nice over a kind of like almost like a baron type groove from Tom on the drums. And then again, I just added a kind of, it's a fairly classic chord progression. It's just descending. But it kind of works I think it works nicely over this simple melody, and it gives a bit more, it's like a cycle which just goes through the whole piece, and then we're layering on different melodies on top of that. So there's a counter melody in the piano. And it gives a nice sequence to improvise over. The other thing to mention is we use harmonium on this, and that is also this kind of, I haven't got a harmonium sound to play this on. You know, the sort of four square nature of that, it just voices very nicely on the harmonium, which blends with the soprano. So that's just an interesting thought, you know, what the actual tone colors that you're using, to me, affect the arrangement a lot. So Tom plays this little groove, as I say, it's almost like a, it's a little kind of baron type groove, and that kind of sets the vibe. And then we're just playing these simple tunes over the top. Etc. So I hope that makes sense. It's pretty simple. It's like a, 4-bar sequence really, but there's something nice. It's a bit like any kind of minimalist or simple music, just using it's almost like it sets something up, and then you can look at it from different angles, and so the simplicity of a cycle, I think it can be a really beautiful thing. So you don't always have to add lots of complicated chords to make it an arrangement sound interesting, in my opinion. Okay, so we're looking at Dear Lord and Father of Mankind. So this is an example of how the lyrics really inform an arrangement for me on this. So there's a verse here which talks about earthquake, wind and fire, and the voice of God speaking through these things. So the thought was to have some kind of darker element to this, a kind of lament type feeling, and so that informs the improvising section. So I'll just basically the whole piece starts off with this kind of which in itself is taken from the end of it's taken from the end of the melody. And then again, there's this kind of pedal idea. Which kind of settles the tonality of the whole piece. The melody comes in. Again with a pedal over it. Under it. Changes there. The vamp comes in. So the solo section takes this this little piano vamp and then adds some root notes descending. Okay, so. So that motif kind of keeps going, but then it kind of decomposes, you know. So to basically a kind of darker Phrygian harmonic minor sort of ish sound. So. But it could be more a harmonic minor sound as well. So that gives scope for just exploring again, like the lower end of the tuba, which, I mean, the tuba has this incredible range. I was talking to Richard the other day about this, and I'm always surprised just how low it can go, and how it can actually sound incredibly interesting down there. It's not just kind of effect; it's quite profound, rich sound. So we wanted to have something where he could play those long pedal notes, just and it also just free up, and using the color of the baritone as well, which baritone saxophone, which has obviously the darker colours in that. So we wanted it to have that kind of side, a sort of darker side to this. You know, it's Dear Lord and Father of Mankind, forgive our foolish ways. So it's got inherent in it something lament-like. So that's what informed that that approach. And then when it's just sort of got very deep and dark, then when we go back to the vamp, you know, it sounds like the clouds are parting a little bit. Anyway, so that's the approach for Dear Lord and Father of Mankind. Okay, so abide with me. The approach on this is again quite different. We're using an organ, a real live church organ in a church in St. Paul's Church in Mill Hill, and as soon as you're using an organ, the organ has such a broad palette of colours, and obviously that beautifully sustained potential, and just the frequency spectrum of an organ as soon as you play the pedals and so on. So because we had the pedals on the organ, that could free us up to have the tuba taking the melody. And also I was kind of then playing a counter melody. And then in terms of the improvising, the organ is comping, you know. So it gets quite a big, thick sound, and the guys are playing over that. So the introduction section for Abide With Me, I think I'm playing a sort of phrase which is a dialogue with the drums. So I'm playing this, but on the organ, I think I've only pulled out some of the harmonics, so you get the kind of the related harmonics to those notes, a bit like on a Hammond organ, you know, if you only pull out some of the overtones, you know, so that gives a sort of slightly weird effect, but I kind of like it. We structure this a kind of free, open section, a dialogue between the organ and the drums, and then the melody's stated. We've got this counter melody. Dan improvises very beautifully on the sax over these big organ chords, and then we return to the way it started on that pedal. So the next song is Spirit of the Living God. So the thing to note perhaps on this is that we play the melody in the key of D flat major, which is a little bit lower than usual. But really so that we can immediately modulate to F major, which is a major third above, which gives this kind of lift. Here's the end of D flat major. And then this relationship between D flat is reflected in the solo section as well, where it has this sort of vamp which goes. So it becomes, for me, it's almost like a wave, or a breathing in and exhaling. It's got just that sort of gentle movement from. And also that play between the major and minor. So that's basically it, and we wanted to have a kind of simple space. The whole point of this song, Spirit of the Living God, Fall Afresh on Me, is it wants to have some space to respond. Doesn't want to have too much content necessarily, but to sort of create an environment where we can just improvise. So that was what informed that. I'm going to say a couple of things about Praise God from Whom All Blessings Flow. Although I can't take credit for this arrangement, I'm going to honour Dan, who brought this in, and this is in itself a very interesting thing. He came in with a concept for this more than a written arrangement. He wanted to start with a kind of full Elvin Jones-like drum energy, play the melody freely, just the saxophone and the drums, and then we were just going to join in, and we'd see where the arrangement took itself. Now, on the actual recording, which I think was probably second take or something, it just happened that we all started playing the melody together towards the end of the arrangement, and it's got a real synergy to it. So I think it's a brilliant piece. But it was interesting that in terms of arrangement, it was more a conceptual thing, but it was enough of a concept to sort of steer us to do something creative together, and to get through knowing, okay, right, well, this is how we're approaching it. But it wasn't too much to be dictating, okay, something too rigid. So I thought it worked really well. And also pianistically, I mean, anyway, it's sort of, because you're not thinking necessarily harmonically, you're thinking more about the energy of the piece. It just makes you play in a different way. I remember really, I was sort of comping along to the flow and the energy of what Tom was playing on the drums. I wasn't, and we knew we were more or less in the key of G, so that gave us some parameters. But it wasn't so much thinking of chords and sequences. It was just thinking of the kind of flow and the energy of that improvising space. So we're on to My Song is Love Unknown. This ended up being quite an open piano solo beginning to the piece, and then we all join in. All the rest of the band joins in towards the end. I think what I wanted to mention was, if I've got the original here. It's such a beautiful melody from John Ireland, who wrote this. So my first approach when I was looking at this is I thought, is it possible just to simplify the chords a little bit, to pare them down, and so we end up with to the B minor. This is such a beautiful chord because you've got the 13th, it's a minor 13th. And then on the original, what do we play? It's sort of E suspended, and the G sharp is then the third of the dominant approaching A. So on that particular phrase, I move down chromatically, which has this chord. You could look at this as a sort of major 7 sharp 5 or a D over a B flat or something. And then the next chord, to accommodate the G sharp, I play kind of augmented. It's a sort of C augmented triad over the B flat. But having that augmented colour, which is kind of implies a whole tone sound, it just adds another colour into the mix, which I really like on that. And also, so the next bit, sorry, this major 7 sharp 5 again. Suspension there. So I think what I wanted just to say is sometimes you're taking chords out to just simplify the harmonic progression, and then sometimes it's just nice to add another colour. So to me this minor major sound, it just adds such a different depth to that phrase. So it gives you more to chew on as well when you're improvising. But I hope we've done justice to John Allen's beautiful tune. Okay, so we're on to All Creatures of Our God King, which goes into another tune, actually a tune I wrote called The River. And this, on this medley, it features our brilliant guitarist, Croatian guitarist, Mihail Majetic, and he is just adding so much to the, in terms of the colour and the whole vibe to bring him in on this particular track. So how is this put together? I think the thing I want to mention first is that this composition, The River, so this was a tune I wrote many years ago, but when I was thinking about this hymn, All Creatures of Our God and King, it has in it a verse that talks about thou flowing water pure and clear. And so I was thinking maybe this could be kind of combined with this original composition. So the original, the River tune has in it these sort of sort of diatonic clusters, really, and particular voicings. So that I took some of those shapes and put them under the melody, All Creatures of Our God and King. I'm not playing it very well because I'm trying to play all the parts at the same time. But you've got basically, all that material in the accompaniment is from The River, and then we've just superimposed the melody on top, All Creatures of Our God and King. And so I think that makes a kind of nice homogeneous approach. You're using material from one thing and referencing it in the other, and that's why the whole piece is one piece and sort of flows, and it's got this vamp. In terms of the structure, it was an open section at the beginning. It sounds almost composed. It's one of those sort of strange things that it was with. I was just improvising with Michael, so it's guitar and piano, and we just kind of launched in freely in the key of D major, and that provided the whole first intro section. So in the back of our minds, we knew we were going into the All Creatures Are Our God and King melody, but it was actually very contrived. It just sort of went. It found its own shape as we were improvising. After the solo section, it kind of breaks down to percussion, and then we creep back in. With the ending, which has already just crept up into F major. And the chords here, it's really just two ideas. You've got a kind of an arpeggio in the right hand, and the left hand is descending increasingly in a kind of whole tone sequence. So I think that this is an interesting idea in terms of combining ideas. The left hand, it's so strong to move in those whole tone intervals that kind of has its own integrity, and you respond to that and think, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then the right hand also has its own kind of logic that I think then covers over the dissonances which you might have. You've got a D against a D flat, which a minor ninth there, which is quite harsh, but it sounds okay to my ears anyway. So that's the end. That's the end of the river. So I'm going to talk a little bit about When Peace Like a River. So this was written for tubas, which in itself is an interesting and unusual combination. But we wanted to have something completely contrast. It was something to feature the tuba and the beautiful sonority of that, and something to be a contrast from the intensity of the previous piece, the river. Wanted to pare everything down and just have a sort of peaceful space. And obviously this is When Peace Like a River, so there's some sort of thematic continuity. And then this vamp, which has been very prevalent in the previous piece, When Peace Like a River is kind of built on top of that. I was wondering how will these, having this sort of close voicings at that pitch, just between the four tubas, will this work? And it's an interesting challenge. I think it works great, and it's surprising how deep the tuba can go, but remain very clear and melodic. So that was an interesting process. We put this there's a key change in this from the key of D to the key of B flat. So we've gone down a major third. Obviously the D is common to them both as the tonic and then the third. So that made a nice key change, but it was also quite pragmatic, because talking to Richard about the range, the higher range of the tuba, we thought that this would lie better. what does it go? So it goes up to a concert E flat there, which is quite high for a tuba, but it's got it's got kind of almost 4 octaves to play with on a tuba. It's incredible, the range. So that was what informed that piece. I think Richard also added another kind of sub octave doubling at a couple of points in the recording as well, and you're hearing, is it that B flat? I think it's the lowest B flat there on the piano. It's quite rare to use those kind of notes and to hear them and enjoy. They need space to be heard properly, so you can on this arrangement. Anyway, hope you like that. So we've got to Here Is Love, which is the title track of the album, and this is the classic Welsh hymn, Here Is Love Vast as the Ocean. And the approach to this, well, really, I had this kind of gospel-y kind of slightly swung kind of, but this evolved in the playing of it, so it wasn't quite so bluesy as that when we first approached it, but as we played it as a band, it kind of went in that direction. And that's another interesting thing about arranging, especially for a jazz group, is that things evolve in performance, in practicing, and so it kind of takes a life of its own. So I'd gone with this piece, and by the time you hear the version on the record, the DNA was the same with that piece, but it's evolved into something much sort of kind of groovier than I'd envisaged at first. The thing perhaps to mention on this is that I wrote this middle bit. So the middle section, it just provides a break from the melody. It's as simple as that. It's sometimes helpful just to have like a middle 8 on a classic pop song or something. You would have a section, it's kind of related to the melody, but it just goes somewhere else, so that by the time you come back to the beginning, it feels fresh again. So that was informing that. We record some kind of Hammond organ sound on this, which also adds that gospel-y, bluesy feel. So there you have it. There are a few thoughts from me about the composing and arranging process. If you've got more questions or you want to dig a little bit deeper on something specific, do feel free to message me. If you want to get hold of the sheet music, they are available, I think the PDF downloads at Kairos Ensemble Bandcamp, as is the album Here Is Love. So cheers.